Now then, this is what happened last week when we spoke to the legendary film producer David Puttnam. He came here for a talk about musicals. It's the final talk in a series of talks he's been holding here at the university, and we had the honour of speaking to him. Here's what happened. The name of today's guest won't be unfamiliar to anyone here at the University of Sunderland. His name is on the side of the building, after all, and your posters adorn the walls inside it. You were the Chancellor, the first Chancellor in 1997. David Puttnam, welcome to the Spark Film Show.
Thanks a million.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing very good.
So, of course, you're here today for your masterclass about musicals.
I am.
Your initial move into film production started with a lot of musicals. That'll Be the Day, and one of my favourite musicals, Bugsy Malone. So was that a conscious decision to get into musicals, or did you just kind of fall into them?
I think it's more an issue of falling into them. I loved musicals as kids. I really did. My family and I used to go and see them. So I always had a real soft spot, and that will become evident, I think, from the seminar I'm doing today. I also think what I was doing was inventing a form of affordable musical. There was no way in the world when we first started that we could have people standing, singing, or get anyone to compose music for us. So what I was doing really was using the thing I was familiar with, which was rock and roll, and injecting it into stories that were not dissimilar from my own. In a sense, they were kind of slightly wish fulfillment. I mean, Stardust is a film about a guy who does probably, in the ideal world, I would have wanted to do, except also then follows the trajectory of what happened to a lot of people in my generation, which was they went into self-destruct. So, yeah, they were based very much in a world that I knew, people I knew, and using music I knew.
So how did you get into the industry, into the actual film industry? You started in marketing.
Yeah, I did.
How did the transition go?
I spent 10 years in advertising. I was fairly happy in advertising, really, but with all the arrogance of being 28 and enjoying your job, and it was the 60s, I suddenly thought, well, do I really, really want to be doing this the rest of my life? And the answer to that was no. What else am I interested in? What I loved was movies, was cinema. And knowing nothing, and when I say nothing, I cannot tell you how nothing was. I decided to have a go at the film industry. I mean, it was done out of total ignorance. It was so bad that I was working with this copywriter, Alan Parker, that we decided to do a script, but we actually didn't know what a script would look like. And we knew it was important to try and lay a script out in a way that looked like a script. I had to steal a script from someone so that we could type it up to look like a script. I mean, that's how little we knew.
So what did your sort of day-to-day role as a producer entail? What kind of things did that involve?
I always worked on scripts, so I always had a sense of paternity in the movies I made. I was determined not just to be a kind of money man, but having developed a script that I liked and thought was makeable, then my job was, yes, to construct the financial arrangements around which it got made. I didn't know anything about directors or anything else, so the first couple of directing decisions I made were not particularly brilliant, and in the end I thought, well, if I'm going to make these mistakes, I'd rather make them with people I know and have worked with, and that's how I started working with Alan Parker and Ridley Scott. I started working with my own generation.
So what are the biggest challenges as a producer? Any highlight sort of moments that stick out as being big barriers to get over?
A weird thing happened. When I first decided I'd ever go at the film industry, it was quite a healthy time for the business. I mean, it's going to sound very strange because it literally collapsed in 1 year. So in 1968, there were a lot of American films being made in Britain, a lot of American money sloshing around in the UK. But by the time I got my act together and was ready to sort of make a move, which was a year, 18 months later, had vanished, literally had evaporated. In hindsight, the best thing could have happened, because what I was then forced to do was build a business based on a kind of poverty industry. I think if it had all happened a year and a half earlier, I would have made a series of assumptions, a series of hirings, made a series of things, and I probably would have crashed and burned along with everybody else. As it was, as I said, we started off in poverty row and built from there, firstly. Then the other thing was all the conventional sources of finance had dried up. But because I didn't come to the industry with any baggage, that I wasn't used to working with the conventional sources of finance, it didn't strike me as weird that I had to create my own. And I did. I started looking around, well, who might be interested in financing movies? And I found that there was a company called Ronco who did TV-supported albums, they were one. So I just had to start looking for other investors. And much more experienced producers than me, and actually better producers than me, were going down like flies because they were used to a system that had died.
So the industry collapsed very quickly. Would you say it's in a much healthier state now?
Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, for the opportunities, I think for a young filmmaker, a good young filmmaker, talented filmmaker, to get their film made are 10 times what they were, I think, when we started out.
You are quite a patron of new technologies and advancing cinema technologies. So what does the future hold for British cinema in particular?
Well, I think for people who've got some self-belief and feel they've got something to say, I think the future is extraordinary. I mean, you've got to remember that, when we sat down to, let's say you've got a script. When we sat down to then work how that script's going to be a movie, the biggest single issue was film stock. Now, film stock's not an issue anymore, but actually we had to work out how much film stock we could afford, not just to buy, but then to process. And all the ramifications, everything you did was built around putting film through a camera, and that was a very expensive process. Every time you turned the camera on, the money was going out like no tomorrow. So first of all, that's gone. You can now literally put a memory stick in a camera and you can shoot your heart's content.
There's a film just a few weeks ago shot on an iPhone.
Oh, well, there's going to be plenty,
yeah.
I think. You've also got the opportunity to have your work seen on YouTube, or there's now dozens and dozens and dozens of festivals. So the opportunity, if you believe you've got talent, the opportunity to actually demonstrate that talent and work with teams of people, this is what I've always been saying to the students here, try and stick together, try and work as teams to get your work seen, has also never been greater. Because, as I said, go back to the film stock business for a moment. Not only were we confronted with that, you then had to go and persuade a cinema owner to run your movie.
Yeah.
And if they said no, that was it. There was no other way of getting it. There was no access to television in those days whatsoever. So you were in a very locked down situation, and that just doesn't exist anymore. It's much, much more free flowing. The opportunities to make mistakes are far greater, and mistakes are very, very important. And the opportunity to literally just learn your craft, learn storytelling.
You've got a filmography that includes Midnight Express, Chariots of Fire, Killing Fields. One of your most famous films, both commercially, critically, financially, is Chariots of Fire. And you said recently that it wouldn't have been as successful today.
I think it would have been much more difficult to sell today. For a start, just looking at the distribution pattern of that film, it was very unusual. We opened fairly, what we would the term of trade is soft. So the film would open on a Thursday night, Friday, and it didn't used to do that well the first weekend. Now, if that were the case today, you'd be pulled on the Monday. You wouldn't even be running the following week. What happened with Chariots is it used to grow week on week on week, and normally, especially in the UK, our best week would be week 5. Now that just doesn't ever happen now. What you've got is these blockbusters, and the Bond film recently, the Spectre, they hit the cinemas. They do enormous first week. They do something like, if they do very well, they do something like 60-70% of that the second week, and then they tail off. But because they've done a huge first week, they'll be kept in the cinemas for quite a while. That could never have happened with Chariots. Chariots would have been gone.
So you retired after a fantastic career, 20 odd years of film producing in the 1990s because you sort of weren't happy with the sort of state of films that were being produced, films that had no integrity.
It's that's one way of putting it. I mean, the what I found was you were getting pushed into making decisions that you knew were not going to work for the movie. For example, one of the first questions you'd be asked, even before you got a script, was well, you had an idea or you bought a book, was who's going to be in it. You say, well, hang on, what do you mean who's going to be in it? I haven't got a script yet. Yeah, we need to know who's going to be in it. So we were doing who's in it films instead of what it's about films, and I found that quite disturbing.
Yeah, but then when you received your BAFTA fellowship in 2006, it was a fantastic speech, by the way. You mentioned George Clooney as an example. Would you say there's any more sort of names you've joined him in that list of being filmmakers who have got integrity and really shine for you?
I think there's groups of people who are beginning to stick together in a quite interesting way. I mean, that group, Jennifer Lawrence, Bradley Cooper, working with David Russell, I'm sure the next film's going to be great. So I think there are groups that have come to like each other, like working together, and some interesting work emerges from that. I mean, I loved, I'm showing a clip of it today, American Hustle. there's just not enough of them. I mean, that's the problem. I've got the BAFTA, DVDs coming through my letterbox every day at the moment, and 1 in 8 is something I'm really interested in seeing.
Really?
Now, if I go back a decade ago, you would have hoped it would be 1 in 3, 1 in 4. So that's worrying. We are actually making too many movies. I know it sounds ridiculous, but there's just too many movies being made. There's not enough screen time to get them into the cinemas, and some of them are very, very poor. You get the sense that, I would work sometimes, in the case of the Clingfields, for example, I worked 2.5 years on the script with Bruce Robinson. And I don't know how many drafts we went through, but let's say 5. Mm-hmm. You'd get a sense that a lot of films now are being shot off the first or maybe second draft, and there's just a lot of work, a lot of more work that should have gone into them, and it shows.
Yeah. So was there ever a temptation after you retired to go back into it? And you've done a lot of work in politics, philanthropy, a lot of charity work. Has there ever been any sort of times when you've sat there and been like,
well, to my
tomorrow?
Enormous embarrassment, having said that I would never do another movie, and meant it,
mm-hmm.
I'm actually next year or early in the following year, actually producing a movie. But I'm doing it out of kind of, in a sense, desperation, because I've been involved in the climate change movement for a long time now.
Yeah.
I just got kind of bored with the sound of my own voice wittering on about it, and I've been, as a result of a book that I was able to get hold of, I found a really fantastic story. So I'm doing a film which is not unlike, in some respects, it reminds me of Midnight Express. I'm doing a drama that's at the bottom, the basis of which is it's a true story about 30 young Greenpeace protesters who got arrested in Russia for getting onto a Gazprom platform, and it's their story. And I find it a fantastic story, and I'm hoping that it will make equally young people look at it and say, you know what, I should be doing that. I should be getting more involved. I should be more engaged. So that's the purpose of it. But it's absolutely intended. It's not a lecturing film. It's not a documentary. It is absolutely a visceral experience where you hope at the end of it, the feeling is, wow, I want to be her. It's actually a her.
It's obviously really important that to have you right here in front of us to pass on your wisdom to the filmmakers of the University of Sunderland who are all studying in the building of your name. So a lot of people I know want to be directors and writers. Why should they go into producing?
They're going to. It's not a question of them going into producing. They will need a producer. Mm-hmm. I mean, I used to see those movies. They turn up from time to time. But it says written, directed, and produced by X. I think that's interesting. So what the hell was I doing? I thought I was really busy. Was I that? It's nonsense. Any director needs a producer. Indeed, just as every producer needs a director. These are teams, and what you need to do is forge good, strong, creative teams, people who believe in each other and who have skills in different areas. The skills of producing are. I was very lucky because I came out of marketing. Half of the skills I needed were embedded in my experience. In a sense, you are a marketer. You're marketing. The only difference is you're creating your own product. And I think, going back, when you ask about why I made the switch, my only frustration in it when I was in the ad agencies was with the clients. I just often thought, what I'm doing here is I'm trying to turn a pig's ear into a silk purse. Why don't I get more involved in the creation of the product? And I started literally talking to clients about, well, if you thought about doing this with the product or that with the product. And that was kind of cumbersome and not necessarily appreciated. So I thought, well, maybe I can get into a business where I can create my own product and then I can market my own product.
So what kind of advice could you pass on to the future filmmakers of tomorrow?
Stick together.
Yeah.
Find out whether you have interdisciplinary talents. Work with people you admire. And there's a slide I've used several times in the seminars, which is you may well be sitting next to the person who's going to change your life. And that's what happened to me. I mean, in the end, when I look back, working with Alan Parker, working with Ridley Scott, working with those guys, we changed each other's lives. I'm not sure we knew it early on, but eventually, in terms of the career changes we made and the way our careers went, we absolutely changed each other's lives.
David Puttnam, it's been an absolute honour to have you talking to us here today, and best of luck with your talk this afternoon.
Thank you.
So there we have it. That was our chat with David Puttnam. He came in here last week. He was very good, wasn't he, Ryan?
He was extremely good, yeah. It was really good to talk to and listen to, and just generally very knowledgeable, as you would expect a man of his calibre to be.
I think he said some very wise words there, some things that definitely should be listened to any filmmakers who are at the University of Sunderland, or anywhere for that matter. I think he's very, very wise. And it's good to talk to somebody who just loves films. That's his passion.
It's great to see someone who's been involved in the industry for so long still have such burning passion for it, you know?
Yeah.
Pass on his knowledge to the next generations of future filmmakers.
Well, I am very, very grateful he came in. So thank you very much, David Puttnam.